Hi, I'm Rainbow, and I think Michael had told you in his last video that I would come and talk to you guys about my experiences and adventures in the paranormal field. So I think we should just get going, and I'll get talking about how I started on this journey of high strangeness and adventures, which led me to being different locations, experiencing different things, different creatures and beings and abductions and you name it. So I thought I would start with when I was really young. My parents were devout Catholics. And so because of that, we went to a Catholic school, and I had two older sisters. And so the three of us went to a Catholic school in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And what this experience with the Catholic school did is it really affected me for the rest of my life. I was in the first grade, and I was chosen. Probably there were about seven or eight of us children. We were taken to a base that was in Albuquerque. I won't say the name, but if you live in Albuquerque, you'll know what it is, and if you don't know what it is, you can look it up. And I was bused to this base, and as children, we were taken into, I believe, underground. And I think we were just tested. I don't think it was anything horrible happening at that point. I think it was my first experience also with grays, and I believe that I befriended, he wasn't gray in color, he was more white in chalk, an alien named Meek Mohan. And that's what I remember his name as being. And so he stayed with me all through my childhood. But what ended up happening is I was taken out of school so much that when it came time to tests, and it came time to learning to read, and it came time to doing a lot of stuff, I was far behind. And it was because I remember being taken and into these rooms, and we were taught in a different manner, more telepathic. So I was learning different things in a different way. And because of that, it affected how I learned in a regular school. So what was interesting is that the principal of this school was a nun, and she knew what was going on. She, I guess, had some kind of I don't know, agreement with the base. And so there, I'm sure I wasn't the only, we weren't the only group of children who were taken. There were other children taken. My oldest sister, she can't even remember from, I think, 2 or 3 grades, because she said this is a blank for her. So I think she might have been taken as well. My middle sister, she doesn't have any memory of that. But anyways, I remember that because I wasn't able to learn like I was supposed to, because I was taken out and taught different other ways of learning and different things, that they had told my parents that I was retarded. And I think that happens to quite a few people who have been abducted and taken from very young ages, is that we're told, our parents are told that we have learning disabilities and all this stuff. And so my mom and dad said, no, this isn't true. And so they basically took me out of the school and had me tested. And I went through every test you can imagine. Doctors said I was fine. They said, take her and put her into a public school. And so that's what my parents did. But something really interesting that happened to me when I was at that Catholic school is I was on the playground, and I remember that I had learned levitation. And that was really interesting for me, because how I had learned it was I was taken to Los Alamos, and we were in the back area in some forest. You know, it was probably on the side of where the caldera is. And I remember that we worked with each child. There were probably about 6 or 7 of us children, and we worked with each one of us with a different alien. And this wasn't Meek Mohan. This was just some other gray alien that I telepathed with. And we would work with this alien, and we would levitate off the ground. And so if we were able to kind of connect with this alien, the higher we would go, and we would be floating around. And I remember that I would connect and I would levitate, and then all of a sudden I'd lose that connection, and then I'd drop to the ground, and I'd land on my knees and my elbows, and it would hurt really bad. And all I just remember is one day I decided I'm not going to do this anymore. So I decided I was going to take off and run, but they had soldiers around the perimeter of where we were at. So you weren't going anywhere. But because of this experience of being taken and learning how to levitate with this alien, I had kind of, I guess I had done it enough. There's kind of like these areas where it's blocked, but I know I had done it enough. And when I was in school on the playground, I levitated. And I remember there were kids around me, and there were 2 young girls. They were around the age of 6. And I did it, and they had these looks on their faces like they'd seen something horrible. And of course, I think levitation for humans is, because we always associate it with being possessed or whatever. People don't normally understand. But the girls were really freaked out, and they told me that if I wanted to have friends, that I shouldn't do that. And they ran off, and I was just left there by myself thinking, well, can't you do this? Why can't you do this? I mean, I can do this. Why can't you do this? And so it didn't make any sense to me why these kids couldn't levitate when I could. So that very moment, I decided I was never going to levitate again. And I'm sure that if I went back to the base, they had a horrible time with me, because I thought I won't have friends if I levitate. And if, I think about it now, and I'm like, I wish I could remember how to do it, but I put a block there, I guess. So that was just one of the experiences that I had. I also had religious visions when I was younger. I don't know if it was my upbringing with my parents, the religion, that the Catholic religion, but my parents used to tell me that I would wake up and I would scream and I would cry and I would talk about these experiences. And I don't know if it was. I think my parents just kind of connected religion to that. I don't know why. But I did have experiences where I did sleepwalk, and then I would end up someplace in the house. I didn't go outside the house, but inside the house. And I wouldn't remember how I got there, or my family would find me and take me back to bed. So I think that the dream world, actually, for me, there's a lot to it, and that's kind of where the dimensional walking came in. But as a young child, I do remember that I worked with men in black. I remember being tested by the men in black. I remember there were 3 different groups of men in black. There were the actual kind of scary looking men in black. There's the military men in black, and then there's the government men in black. And so there's 3 different groups that portray themselves, well, 2 different groups that portray themselves as the men in black, but there's only one group that are the actual men in black. And those are the actual beings, I call them beings, that I worked with. I did have an experience after I did go, my parents sent me into public school. And I remember that when I was coming home from school one day, a big, very unusual looking car, probably an old car from around the 30s or 40s. It was kind of a cartoonish looking car to me. And there's actually, I saw one photograph a while back of a book that I was reading, and I saw the car, and it actually looked like this car. And I remember the door opening, and I remember a voice inside the car said, "You need to get in the car." And I I wouldn't get in. And this is in broad daylight. This is like just me walking home from school, about 2:30, something like that in the afternoon. And I wouldn't do it. And so somebody had opened up the door, and the door opened kind of backwards so that it kind of opened in front of me in a weird way. So I ran around it, and I ended up booking it and going home. And I told my mom what had happened. I said, someone was trying to abduct me, take me, make me get into the car. And I don't remember her response. She probably just thought I was imagining things. And that's one of the things too that made my upbringing really hard, is that I had a lot of stuff happening to me, and I didn't have parents that I really could talk to, because they thought I had a very active imagination. So that's one thing that I'll say to everybody, that if your kids are talking about kind of weird stuff like what happened to me or anything else, and listen to them, because they're probably telling you the truth, and they're probably trying to tell you in their way. But as an adult, if you can figure out what's happening to them, that would help immensely. It would have helped me if I could have, at a young age, had a parent that could have understood what was happening to me. So that's that in itself is really important. Once I went to public school, I noticed that the experiences that I had were more at night after that, because they didn't take me from a public school. I think it was a little harder. So I had a lot of experiences at night. I also had that ducky, goopy, pink fluid stuff coming out of my private parts. And that was always very embarrassing for me, because I could never figure out as a child, like, oh my God, what did I eat, or what was going on? But I have experiences just being mortified of trying to figure out what this stuff is. That kept happening to me until I was probably, I believe, upper 30s. When I hit 40, all that kind of stuff, where I felt like I was taken, and then some kind of examination was being done, it stopped when I hit 40. So after 40, they didn't have any more interest in me. I guess I was, to them, I was too old or whatever. But I do remember that, and I remember trying to figure out why that would even happen to me. And the thing about it is that all this stuff is really scary when you're a kid. When you're an adult, you can kind of research and look up information, and you can talk to people about it. But as a kid, you don't want to tell anybody, and I didn't. And so that was one of the scariest things for me, is that I didn't have anybody to talk to. The next thing is, when I was 6, when I was actually at the Catholic school, I was taken to the base, and there were a bunch of kids. There were so many children. There were hundreds of kids, and we were all ages. We were probably anywhere from, I think, 4 on up to probably 9 or 10. And I remember being in a building that was some kind of metal barracks that was kind of built into a mountain. And I remember it echoing, and I remember all the kids yelling and talking and acting goofy. And I remember how loud it was. It was horrifically loud. And I remember we were being taken someplace, and I remember we were all in lines, and I remember people with white coats, and I remember we were getting ready to get onto the blue buses. So we were being taken from the base to the west side of Albuquerque. And I kind of vaguely have a memory of the ride, but I blank out, and then all of a sudden I'm in a line, and I'm looking out beyond where I'm standing, and there's 3 large UFOs. They're extremely large. And there were kids lined up over by each different, each of the UFOs. And and we were all ages in the lines. It wasn't like just all the 9-year-olds over here, all the 6-year-olds over there. It was just whoever, for whatever reason, they put us all in different groups. And I remember it was one of the first memories I have of seeing a mantid. And the mantid was standing in front of our line. And then the mantid is the praying mantis type of aliens. And I remember thinking, oh, this is so exciting, because I thought we were going to go on rides. It was going to be exciting. And I thought, oh my God, you know, we're going to go on a, you know, they're going to take us up and bring us back. And the mantid knew what I was thinking. And he telepathed to me that whoever's being taken wasn't going to come home, that they were going to take the children and they were just going to be gone. And that was just so scary to me. I remember praying that I wouldn't be picked. And I looked down on the ground. I wouldn't look at the mantid. And I was just, my heart sunk and I was terrified. So I remember there was a boy who had blonde hair. He was about 9 or 10, and I had a little crush on him because he was cute. He's also a prankster too. So he paid me a little bit of attention. And, you know, at 6, I thought that was so cool. That older kid was paying me attention. But anyways, he was one of the kids that got picked to go. And I just didn't know what to do. I thought, well, should I tell him? And I thought, gosh, if I tell him that they're going to do something to me. So I didn't say anything. And so he was really excited to go. And he was escorted towards one of the UFOs, because where the lines were, they weren't like right next to each UFO. We were probably, I don't know how many feet away. We were probably, with each UFO, probably about a football field away from each one, I think. And so he was escorted there, and I don't know whatever happened to him. I don't think I never saw him again. But I didn't get picked, obviously, because I'm talking about it. But that was one of the memories that came back to me when I hit 40. I didn't remember any of this. There were so many memories that I didn't remember, but I knew deep down inside that unusual things had happened to me, because I was always having paranormal experiences happening to me. I was seeing spirits. I could hear spirits. They would try to make contact with me. And I think that just goes along with being abducted. I think once that someone's abducted, what happens to you is then you kind of are an open book, and you kind of are marked in a way to where the paranormal is just attracted to you. It's just a part of the frequency changes in you. Because I think when you're around beings that are not from this planet, it does change your frequency. So as children, I think being trained by them and taught different things by them, that it changed our frequencies. So once you're around that, you're not the same. You're not like other children. So when I hit 40 and all these memories came back to me, it came back to me in a really strange way, in something I never expected to happen. I was going to a community center as a dancer for 30 years. At that point, I had been dancing for about 15, 17 years. Anyways, I had prepared all day to try to get everything together for these kids. And I was going to do a dance for these kids, and I was going to do bring some fun stuff for them to check out and play with, and talk to them about what I did, and talk to them about the culture I represented. And I had a headache that whole day, that morning, and it was just, it wouldn't go away. And I was going to almost call and say, I can't make it because I wasn't feeling well, but I thought, no, I can't do that to the kids, because it was always important for me to be able to dance for children and to have fun with them and teach them stuff. So I went ahead and got in my car, and I went, and I was actually listening to my music, trying to remember all my choreography, what I was going to do, when I was stopped at a light, and it was on the west side of town. of Albuquerque. And it was almost like a comet swirling, just swirled and got bigger and bigger, this bright light. And I thought, oh crap, this is going to come right at me. And it came and it hit the windshield of my car. And all of a sudden I became paralyzed. But kind of in my mind, my body, even though I wasn't able to be, I wasn't able to have any control, somehow something took control of my body. It wasn't me, it was something else, and drove me to this place. And I just don't remember driving. I don't remember anything. And while I was going to this community center, all this stuff was being downloaded in me. All these memories maybe opened up. I don't know, download, opened up, you name it. I don't know what it was. But anyways, after after I got to that parking lot of the community center, I kind of woke up and I got out and I started crying because I thought, oh my God, what just happened to me? So I pulled myself together and I went inside and I went ahead and I danced for the kids. I did a little lecture for the culture I represented, brought stuff for them to play with, taught them some dance moves, did all the stuff I was supposed to do, and then I left. When I went back home, I just went into a deep depression, and then I started remembering everything in detail. And for about a year, I was in deep depression. And I don't know why. And maybe it was just remembering such amazing things that had happened to me. All had to do with UFOs, aliens, abductions, you name it, all of it. And once that happened, then my journey really started with finding out what happened to me, which happens to a lot of people who have been abducted and had these experiences. When you get to a point where you start remembering, then your journey, your life changes because your journey, changes. It's no longer the same. So that was pretty traumatic, but in many ways very freeing, because it explained a lot of stuff that I was experiencing and going through throughout my 20s and my 30s. Now, something interesting that happened that was also pivotal too, that actually a memory that came back to me that I couldn't even believe that I had forgotten, was when I was in my 20s and I was working cattle. I was married to an artist, A. Kelly Pruitt, and he and I were in Santa Rosa, New Mexico, and it's very hot there in the summertime, extremely hot. I wouldn't necessarily say it's the armpit of New Mexico, but it's pretty hot. And we were looking after some cows and calves. And it was, we were in an area that was way off the highway. It took about a good 45 minutes to get to this area that we were camping out at. And we were in this area for about, I'd say, a week. And our job was to look after the cows and calves on this one certain area. And we hadn't seen, I think, the cattle for a day. So we decided to ride out and check out where they were and what was going on with them. And as we were as we were riding our horses, we came around a bend, and there, right in front of us, was a UFO. It was probably anywhere from, I'd say, it's probably 20 feet long. It was really actually compact and small. And there was a tall blonde woman in a silver tight meshy suit standing by it. And I remember saying to Kelly, are you seeing this? Oh my God, this is amazing. So Kelly waved at her, she waved back, and we rode our horses up to where this UFO was. We got off our horses, met the woman. She was, Kelly was about 6'1". She was as tall as him or maybe a little taller. And while he was talking to her, I had to go by the UFO and check it out. Of course, you're going to do that. So I remember touching it, and even though it was really hot, because it was late morning when we kind of rode out, I remember that it was cool to the touch, and it was kind of soft and kind of, it wasn't hard. It was really hard to explain. It was a silver color, like a silver metal, but it just had, it shone differently. It felt different. It was kind of mushy a little bit, and but it's very cool to the touch. And I thought, that's strange because it was so hot out. And so Kelly and the tall blonde gal came over to where I was, and she asked me if I wanted to go inside the UFO, and I said, well, yeah, of course I want to go inside. So she took me inside, and I crawled in, because you had to crawl in. It's not like in the movies where the door opens up and you just kind of walk in. This one, it wasn't like that. So I got in, and there was this a circular cylinder in the middle. She had a panel off of that, and she was reworking something. And she was trying to explain to me what she was doing. She was working on the craft because something wasn't quite right. And something about how the sun also worked with whatever she was doing. So she was in the area where there's a lot of sun. She needed the sun for some reason. I don't know why. I don't remember. And I remember just seeing wires and weird stuff I'd never seen before inside the cylinder. I went to go look to see where she would, I guess, I don't know if you say drive the spacecraft, or she would take control of it. But she had a chair that looked like something like you would sit outside, a recliner, you know, one of the metal chairs that you suntan on. But it was kind of shaped like that, but she was angled back, so she was kind of looking up. There was no window whatsoever where she had all the panel and had all the gadgets and everything. There's nothing, there's no window. She did have a real small window over on one side, and I was really upset. I don't know why. I guess I watched way too much Star Trek or whatever, but I couldn't get over the fact that she didn't have a very big window. I thought, well, gosh, if you're going to fly your spacecraft, you want to look out the window. But that's not, you know, that's really not reality either. She flew this craft with her mind. She was very aware of her surroundings, and she just didn't need to see everything that we need to see, because I think we depend way too much on sight. They depend on their other abilities, their mental abilities to be able to do things. And so she thought that was funny that I was a little upset about the window. And so we came out, and Kelly asked me how it was. I said, it was amazing. It was fantastic. And I said, you know, I'll never forget this. And she said, well, I'm sorry, you're going to have to. And I looked at her and I said, no, I'm never going to forget this. Are you kidding me? I'm not going to forget that I met you and I was inside your spacecraft. And she said, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to make you forget. And I argued with her, and I got really mad, and I said, what are you talking about? I'm going to remember this. No, you're not going to make me forget. And we went back and forth, and then boom, I was on my horse riding, and Kelly's looking at me, and he's grinning. And and I remember when I kind of snapped to on my horse, I was really irritated. And I said, what are you looking at? And he said, nah, nothing. He goes, I'm just making sure you're okay. And I thought, that's a strange thing to say. But what I found out afterwards, that Kelly had been in contact with them for years. He had worked with aliens before, and I don't know if Kelly was necessarily human. He was also the medicine man that I studied with, Thunderbow. So just the fact that, you know, he looked at her as if she was a friend, a long lost friend that he hadn't seen in a long time. It didn't occur to me when we rode up there and they greeted each other. It didn't occur to me that, yeah, they knew each other. So anyways, that memory came back to me as well on that fateful day when that swirling energy came and hit me when I was driving to the community center. So that was pretty amazing and pretty intense. And so then I realized, well, there's a lot that happened in my life that, you know, I'd been blocked. I'm not quite sure how to put it. But the only thing that did happen to me that was a constant was the paranormal. It just didn't stop. And that was something that in a way was a comfort, because when you feel strange and you feel weird and you feel different than everybody else, when you have something strange happening on a regular basis, like the hauntings or spirits or whatever, it gives you a strange, weird comfort. Because I think a lot of people comment that they do feel strange and they do feel weird. They feel different than everybody else when all this stuff happens to them. And it's really true, because how do you put in context that you're abducted by aliens, and then people are going to think you're nuts? And then and I've never been concerned about what people think of me. I'm not one of those people that I don't say things because I'm scared of what people are going to think. I think that when I was a child with my parents, I just realized that they wouldn't understand and they would be very afraid. Now, one thing I'm going to say that was really, I think, sadistic on the part of whoever was working with me when I was going to the base when I was 6. And I have not forgotten this. It has stuck with me from the moment they did this. And you know, I'm just going to put a little warning here, because what you're going to hear is going to be a little, it's going to be gross. It's not something that I enjoy talking about. But I remember, in order for me to keep my silence with my parents as well, that at the base, what they would do is they would take little kittens and they would take bunny rabbits. I think they had puppies. And in order to keep us children quiet so that we wouldn't talk to our parents, they would slit the throats of the little bunny rabbits and the little kittens. And they said, if you tell your parents, this is what we're going to do to them. And so I was told that if I said anything, that's what they would do to my mom. They didn't necessarily say my dad, but my mom. So whenever I was going off and doing stuff where I couldn't see my mom, or my mom and dad would go out to dinner and they would come back late, I would be freaked out and scared and I'd cry. I couldn't go stay with relatives because my mom thought I was just really attached to her. And what she didn't understand is that I had this guilt complex of if I didn't see her, if I didn't have her in view, I knew she'd be okay. But if she was away from me, I couldn't keep her safe. I felt responsible for her safety and for her staying alive at 6. And so from 6 probably on up into 14, I felt responsible for my mom in that manner. I don't think that was fair, and it was okay, and it was horrible what they did. But I've never forgotten that, and I don't think I've ever told my parents that they did that. And I think what made it even worse is that the principal at that Catholic school, who was a nun, she knew exactly what was going on, and they knew. And so I always had this bunny kind of traumatic. Anytime I see a bunny, or I'd see it on TV, or I'd flash back to what they would do, or puppies. And I just remember just it not being very, very, very traumatic, and something that I just didn't know how to deal with. So, so I'm able to deal with it now, but it was very traumatic at the time. And it still is a bit now, because I mean, I remember them doing that. And, you know, what child wants to see something young and innocent like they are, get their throat slit? Nobody wants to see that. So that was one way they did keep us quiet. So when I was with Kelly, I did experience, because I was studying to be a medicine woman, I did experience dark witches. I had an experience with two as I was going up through my 20s. I did experience a skinwalker shapeshifter, and that's, I thought, was maybe part of my training as a medicine woman, but I don't think that makes any sense. It just happened to be just my life experience. One woman that I dealt with, who was a dark witch, she would take animals, and she would, birds in particular, and she would somehow do ceremony, and she would take their life force, and she would use it to keep herself looking young. And down the line, I'll talk about that. I'll talk about the dark witches, but I had to confront her, and it was very scary, let me tell you. And it was very sad, because I wasn't able to help out the animals who had asked for help. That was extremely sad for me. And then there was another woman who was a dark witch, and I always felt when I had met her that something was a little off with her. And so I had to figure out how to deal with her, and I did. One thing about the medicine way is that when you do start on that path, you will come across a lot of very unusual individuals. And these were two people that just happened to be on the path I was walking. I mean, I never planned on meeting these two women, but I did. And I think the lesson was how I dealt with the experience and what I took from it. You know, you have to learn from people who are dark to understand the darkness. So in my medicine days, that's what I tried to do. There was another witch that I experienced when I was in my 30s, when I was dancing. And that was very interesting as well. So I think that on my path, in the medicine way is until my last dying breath. I mean, it's just who I am. But I remember that saying, to know the light, you have to know the dark. You have to understand the dark, because I think we have both inside of us. And so it just depends on which side that we actually feed the most. So as someone who's always going towards the light, I have had the darkness a part of my life, because I think that darkness is attracted to the light. It just is. You're gonna be tested. And the only way that you can know that how far along you've come or what's happened in your life is to have those tests. So the dark witches will be in another video, because I think that would be an interesting talk, explaining my thoughts on all of that. And let's see here. When I was teaching dance, I had a really interesting experience. This started off on an adventure to Egypt. I went to Egypt when I was about 28, and I stayed there for months with a friend of mine. And she was going there to dance, and she'd been a professional dancer, and I was going there to study, and just I wanted to experience everything: Cleopatra, Egypt, the pyramids, Luxor, the Valley of the Kings and Queens, Saqqara, all of it. I wanted just to experience all of it. Well, I was told before I went by different medicine people who were good friends of mine, my mentors, that I shouldn't go, that I was too open because I was studying the medicine way, and that there could be things coming at me. And the reason for that is because of the sorcery that Egypt is known for. So I decided to go anyways. And so when I went, I had an experience with a short guy who, a young man who was more Mayan in his look. He didn't look Egyptian at all. He had like bangs and like a strange haircut. And he was following my friends and me the whole day. And my friend who's Egyptian had said, well, Rainbow, I think that he's following you. He's trying to see what you're doing, because the guy would always come around us and he'd be looking at me, and he'd looking at me strange. And I thought, well, I mean, who knows what he was doing. There were a lot of unusual people around the pyramid at that time. So I thought, well, I didn't think anything of it, but he followed us the whole day. And we eventually ended up having to run away from this guy, and he was chasing us, and we got into a taxi and we just took off. So my friend Ahmed said, well, Rainbow, he definitely was checking you out, not in the sense of, a guy interested in a girl. He had some really strange vibe to him. He just didn't seem human, and he freaked all of us out. Let's say that was probably, I was 28. Let's just say in my early 30s. Let's see, 30s. Yeah, about 33, 34. I had a studio in Corrales, New Mexico, and I had a group of students, and we were going to Roswell, New Mexico, to do a dance recital. And I told one of my students about that experience that I had in Egypt, where this very unusual person was following us, almost alien-like. And so she said, well, that was, that really freaked me out. And I said, well, I just feel like something's going to happen while we're here in Roswell. So I said, just be on the lookout. So we went to the Roswell Museum, and it was really crowded. We all walked in. There were about 10 of us walking in. And lo and behold, there is that same guy, same bangs, same. I mean, it was almost like he had a wig on, and it didn't fit right. Very short, and came right up to me in front of my students and was doing the exact same thing. He was looking at my left thigh, and he was like really staring at my left thigh, and it was very strange. And so my students, my one student started to walk in front of him, and then we moved to another area, and every time we'd move, he'd move. And he just basically came right up to me and just was looking right at me. And I knew right off the bat he was a gray. And I knew that he was the same alien that I had seen back in Egypt. And so we started walking to another area. He turned and he started walking really fast and went out the doors. We went out and we tried to follow him and look to see where he went. And we didn't see where he went. We don't know. But I realized that something unusual had happened in Egypt, because also at the same time, I had an experience of being paralyzed one evening. I woke up, I couldn't see anything. I mean, I could see, only thing I could do was see, and I couldn't move. But I couldn't see anything around me. But I could feel a pressure on my lower back. And I thought, what is going on? I thought, oh God, I came to Egypt and now I have this, now I'm paralyzed from head to toe. What's going on? But it was a different feeling because I had pressure on my lower back when it was pushing really hard. And I remember Kelly had worked with me on, it wasn't meditation, but it was kind of like a unusual kind of focusing. And I remember that I tried to calm myself down because I was like sweating from head to toe. I was like soaked. I was so freaked out and scared. And I just decided to focus and just to push off whatever this was that was pushing me down on the bed. And it took a good 10 minutes. It took a long time, but I was finally able to, I thought I was able to push this thing off of me. And I jumped out of bed and I'm looking around and I'm like, what the heck was that? Now, it could have just been that this thing just, maybe in my mind, I was focusing, trying to make it let go of me, and maybe it just decided to let go of me. I don't know the timing of what happened. Anyways, I was able to jump out of bed, and I went to the bathroom, cleaned myself off because I was just dripping. I was just sweating because I was just so panicked, and it was really hard to go to sleep. I went and laid down, in about an hour I was able to go back to sleep. Next morning I got up, I looked at my lower back because it didn't dawn on me to look at my lower back when I jumped out of bed that evening, and there were all these round brown dots on me. And so I know something had happened. I'm not quite sure what, but from the experience of the alien following us around the pyramids, and from the being paralyzed in my bedroom, all that, I knew something had happened in the mix of Egypt. And so from that point on, I'd had experiences where I was taken, and not all the time though. And that's the weird thing about this whole experience, is that you can go 6 to 7 months without having anything happen to you, and then all of a sudden you'll have 2, 3, 4 different things happen to you all in a row, and you can't figure this out. Or you can go a year without having something happen to you, and then the following year you have all this mess of stuff going on. So I think the important thing that I've learned is that I just have to be awake and aware. I have to be conscious and aware, and I have to know that at any given time anything can happen. Now, one thing I do know, like I said before, that when you get older, they lose interest in you for some reason. Maybe they come and see me every once in a while, and I can feel it because I'll feel like I've had an examination, but I don't have it happen as often as I used to. So probably one of the last things that happened to me that for me changed everything was one more thing I should say that changed everything for me is that the year that I retired from dancing publicly, I was going to teach, but I wasn't going to perform anymore. It was a New Year's Eve, and I was in my pajamas at like 9 o'clock at night. That was like never happened for like years because I was always performing for New Year's. And I went to bed early, and I've never forgotten this. So I woke up, I was lying down on a love seat, and that's where I'd fallen asleep. And the love seat was 3 feet up off the ground. And I woke up and I was looking up, and I saw a neon blue light swirling around. It was making this whoosh, whoosh, whoosh sound. And it was neon blue, and it was white. And I looked up, and I was very disoriented, very confused. And I didn't know what was happening. And it was almost like they went, oh my God, she woke up. And they just let go of that couch, and the couch dropped 3 feet. on the ground. And I roll out of it and I am dizzy. I'm not feeling well. I'm disoriented. I knew I was home, but I couldn't understand what was going on. For some strange reason, I went over to where my computer was and I typed in what sounds do UFOs make. And I think I found a video of Billy Meyer, an audio sound of him. And I listened, and I don't know how I even found it because I was really not there. And I heard the sound of what he said was a UFO. And that kind of confirmed what I had heard. Well, after this experience, it took me a couple hours to just kind of decompress and get myself back. I went to sleep and then I woke up and I realized that something was different with my body and I couldn't understand what. And then my memory came back to me. And that was the beautiful thing, is that my memory came back. They may have tried to block it, but it came back. I was taken on a craft and I was taken apart. My body was taken apart. I saw on a table, a long table, I saw my body parts. And I was inside of a glass container or some kind of container. And I'm looking through. I don't even know how I'm looking because I'm not looking with eyes, but I could still see my body. And so it looked like there were tall, big alien people who were kind of working on different parts of my body. And when that happened, they kind of put me back together. And then I guess my consciousness is placed back into my body. And then that's when I was brought down. And that's when the couch dropped. And so after that, for about a year after that, I did not feel well. And I was also depressed after that too, because that was pretty, either I had lost my mind or something crazy had happened to me. And that's basically when I started looking for answers. And that's basically when I reached out to Norio Hayakawa. Norio was in Rio Rancho, and since I was in Albuquerque, I had found that he was pretty much on the forefront of UFOs and aliens, and of course, he went out to Area 51, and so I thought, well, I'd contact him and find out tell him what happened to me regarding, on the west side of Albuquerque with the children and all this stuff. And so I met Norio, and then from Norio, I met Michael, who was my partner. And I actually was invited to give a talk at Michael's group, the New Mexico Paranormal and UFO Forum. And so that's how I met Michael. And that was great because at the time I met Michael, I was having a lot of really intense and amazing experiences. And he was there to be able to help me get through it all, because it seemed like in one way, as soon as I started actually remembering a lot of stuff, more things would be happening to me. And and scary things too. I also had experience with a student where she was still in the military, and she had worked at White Sands, and she had maybe explained a few things to me. One evening we were drinking, I don't know what we were drinking, champagne. I guess we were having mimosas is what we were doing. I made mimosas because that's one of my favorite drinks. And I'd asked her a few questions about some stuff, and she'd answered, and maybe she wasn't supposed to, I don't know. It doesn't even matter. It wasn't anything that was top military secrets or whatever. It was just questions on stuff that already is out there. Let me put it that way. So there's nothing that she answered me that I didn't already know. But from that moment of that dinner, where we were having fun talking and just schmoozing, I got visited by a white van, and they made their presence known, and they were very threatening. And so, and the white van was more military than anything. And so I had asked her about that, and she had told me that, yeah, they came to visit me and that she could no longer take classes from me. And that was the last I'd heard from her. So I don't know what happened to her. But I do know that you know, things started happening probably more at a constant, I shouldn't say constant, consistently to me. So that's kind of, in regards to all of that, that's kind of where I was at when I met Michael. Now with Michael, not that I didn't know about the cryptids, but Michael was really into the cryptids, especially the Sasquatch. I'm more intrigued with Dogman, to be honest. I love the Sasquatch, but I'm very intrigued, I guess, because I'm, you know, Anubis, all that aspect of the Egyptian deities. So when I met Michael, and he had talked to me about the cryptids, and we started going out and doing our research. One Sasquatch had seen me in Oregon on a trip that Michael and I took. I think it was for the holidays. And he made contact with me back in Albuquerque. And actually, I was in the shower, which was very, it was very uncomfortable. And he told me what his name was. His name was Loki, and he was a portal jumper. And so he decided that he wanted to have contact with me because he said I didn't have anything to prove. He said I wouldn't try to get famous with the information that he was giving me, and that I, you know, he wanted somebody that would just say what he needed to say, and that would be it. So, I mean, because it's really silly if anybody thinks they're going to get rich regarding the Sasquatch or the Dogman or any cryptids, because you're not going to. It's basically going to, you just have to make friends and be respectful and get information and share it if you can. So anyway, so he gave me information, and I drew, I have a drawing of him that I drew, and I'll share that with you during another video. And then Michael and I had an experience with Tulak, who was a dog man, and we actually have a photograph of Tulak that we were able to take. And Tulak was with a bear. And what makes that interesting is that, you know, a lot of people think that the cryptids probably don't get along with other animals like, you know, bears or whatever, cougars, mountain lions. And they do get along. And so there was a big bear that turned on its haunches. And Michael told me, he said, Rainbow, be careful, when we were on a trek at the Sandia Mountains. And I saw the back end of this bear, and it was running. And then I saw the bear go one way, and I saw Tulak go the other way. And so that was our first experience actually seeing, or me, I should say, I was the one that saw him, seeing a dog man. And we have the photograph, which is really nice. I think his name came to me, I believe, like sometime afterwards. I don't know if it was that day or if it was a couple of days later. He gave me his name. And he also told me about a portal that's there that wasn't very far off from where I saw him. And so he wanted Michael and I to come back to check out the portal. And we just never did. I think it was based on Michael's work. So he didn't want me to go up there by myself, and he wanted to be with me, so I didn't go. And we weren't able to go in I think the weekends that that came after that, the weather started getting bad. But then we had experiences in Utah. So from New Mexico, we went to Utah, and we experienced Dugway Proving Grounds, and I think Michael talked to you about that, and Skinwalker Ranch. And Skinwalker Ranch was kind of a place that I'd been wanting to see for a long time. I had contact there, and we'll talk about that during another video as well. I think that should be a video on its own. Dugway Proving Grounds, I can include in that because the beings that I drew, the beings that told me to take photographs. So we got some interesting photos from that. So we have photos and a drawing, and then we've got from Skinwalker Ranch, I did some drawings of both entities that contacted me from that. One was a jinn named Antioch, and Amadeus was a more of an earthbound angel. And there's a natural portal on Skinwalker Ranch. Spacecraft come through it. I'd written about this before the series on Skinwalker Ranch came out this past year. I'd already written about it. Tried to talk to, I think I tried to contact George Norrie, George Knapp on regarding that. And I couldn't get him to get in contact with me. Michael talked to George Knapp and still couldn't get in contact. I mean, the problem is that when someone like me, an empath, says we see this or that, people either believe you or they don't, or they think you're nuts, or they're like, oh God, here's another one. So it's kind of sad because I might have information that I could have given them a long while ago before this series came out. But craft do come in and out of Skinwalker Ranch because it's a natural portal. So that's the way it is. And then on Dugway Proving Grounds, there's interesting stuff happening over there. But there's different types of beings that are there. And I think contact has been made with them over at Dugway. So I think that's another video as well. We did make contact with Warja, who is a Oregonian Sasquatch here, and we were gifted a beautiful wreath that she made for us. And so when we talk about our Sasquatch experiences, we'll definitely bring that and show it to you on video. So I'm sure there's stuff that I'm missing, but I don't want this video to go on too long so that you guys are, going, oh my gosh, it's too long. So there's lots to talk about. And I hope that as we progress with this channel, that we get better at talking. It's a little hard getting in front of a camera. Even though I did instructional videos, it's different when I can show you how to do a choreography than to sit here and talk about myself, because I don't know if anybody's interested in hearing what I have to say. But Michael and I thought, well, heck, we might as well just come and do our videos and see what anybody thinks. Also, I think what's really important for Michael and me is that if there's anybody else out there that has had these experiences or isn't sure what to do, has a lot of questions, maybe we can answer each other's questions. But I think it's just really more for us to get together with other people who are having these experiences and to like minds think alike and see if we can figure stuff out. So that's kind of why we're doing this. But anyways, I appreciate you listening to me and hearing my quick little excerpts of my life. Hope I didn't zigzag around too much. And Michael and I are going to be doing a video together next. And I don't even know what it's going to be about, but we decided to do one together. So each time that we come on here and do videos, we'll just let you know what's coming up next. So we've got one we're going to be doing together. So I hope it's probably will be about Sasquatch. Don't quote me on that, but that's what I think. So I hope you all are doing well. Please give us a thumbs up and subscribe if you so wish to, and be a part of our journey on YouTube. We don't know where this is going to take us, but we're willing to give it a shot and try out. So take care, and we will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.